intro on what Megabyte Labs is, what Install Doctor is, and then a little bit about the tasks I need to get done to sync some of the data that Install Doctor relies on with a database that's hosted that'll power some of what Install Doctor does. Anyway, so Megabyte Labs is kind of like the umbrella LLC that for a company, startup company that creates a bunch of cool developer tools. And you could check more on what I have to say about what Megabyte Labs is by going to megabyte.space, and you can browse through some of the technologies we support, some of the projects we've done in the past, and more information on that. Anyway, that's not a hard requirement, so we can get out of this. Install Doctor, install.doctor, so HTTPS install.doctor is a project that is basically a desktop. It could be used for servers too, but it's a desktop provisioning system, so that, you know how like the longer you use a computer, the slower it seems to get. You know, sometimes you got to reformat and then reinstall all the software, and you lose some of your settings. This whole project is to make it so that you can reformat often and bring your desktop back to its original state while getting all the updates, and like, you know, if you have malware on your system, it'll get wiped each time you reformat. So the idea here is to just automate the heck out of everything and just set it up perfectly with it all defined in a single repository, and that's what Install Doctor does. So you could check more about what Install Doctor does. It does a lot of things, you know, it includes scripts, it includes some custom programs that install software on all these different types of systems, and it's all designed so that you have to input as little information as possible, and while still being able to support all these systems. So if you have a package for Windows, you want to have the definition for installing it on Fedora in the same place in case you use both systems. That way you could bring any of these operating systems into a similar state where they all have consistent software. Okay, so here is the Install Doctor repository. It's basically a Chesmois. I don't know, it doesn't really matter for this project, but it's Chesmois based because most of the configurations for a system rely on like configuration files stored in dot files, you know, .config, .local. But anyway, what we're concerned with for this particular project are the software definitions in the software.yaml of the base of this project. So you could see at the top we have some documentation outlining all the different possible fields, but for us to get into it, so we have if you scroll down a little bit and you see something called software packages, and now it has all these different entries, and we'll just scroll. Let's find a good one. Let's see. This is a good one. Okay, so we have this package called DUF. So DUF, and you could see it has all these different meta fields. It has a GitHub address, which is important for this project, but it also defines all this other stuff. And then Duff can be installed by using Duff on brew. I mean, this actually isn't a good example, but Chocolatey, the package, is also called Duff. But let's find another better example. So if we scroll down, let's see. Let's one with Go. Okay, so for we could look at FQ, which is JQ for binary formats. It's a package that can be installed by using this brew or this APK or this Go package. And in this way, you can define all the ways you can install a package just by writing like a handful of lines of like easy to fill out code, which hopefully we can autofill this using AI eventually. And anyway, so let's go to the next part. So we want to take this file into consideration, and then here, let me jump to this right here. So anyway, so this is a little spreadsheet app I created with Rowie that basically cycles through a bunch of different GitHub repositories, and all of these GitHub repositories that we're scanning are featured on GitHub Awesome lists. So my script goes to GitHub Awesome lists. If you're not familiar with the GitHub Awesome list, it's basically just like a README repository with a subject matter expert that just details all the best GitHub projects for any given type of project. So for instance, this line correlates to the shell GitHub Awesome list. So this is all terminal shell, like bash kind of utilities. So this one's a Zish theme, but it's on the shell GitHub Awesome list, and you can see all the different lists. There's like a lot of them. But what makes this cool is, so at first we filter all the repositories on GitHub by only including ones that have been featured in a GitHub Awesome list. And then we combine all of those repositories into a table that contains all of the GitHub information that's relevant to each repository that was linked to on an Awesome list. And then now we can do things like sort by how many stars the repository has. So in this way, we can find software, like we can find the best software by sorting it by the amount of stars. So we filter out the software that we include in Install Doctor using multiple layers of filtering. And then what we want to do is, so we have all this information. Now we want to, so now for FQ, we can, this is the GitHub link. We want to automate the process of, now we can filter this. URL equals FQ. Hopefully FQ shows up. No, it didn't. Let's try another one. Let's change this to short text. Let's see if we can search now. Okay, that was a bad example. Okay, and then let's find another one that'll definitely be here. Let's see. Alright, I'm pretty sure Hexel will be somewhere in here. Okay, and there we go. Oh, okay, so now we found a match. So this entry should correspond with this row in the table. So what we want to do is create a function that imports all of this data into this row, and we'd expand it. There'd be however many of these entries, there should be that many entries added to this row. Yeah, so we want to be able to import, and ideally I'm looking for a way of, like, they have these webhooks and extensions. I'd like to use those, so maybe we could click a button or use a webhook to import the software.yaml file information, and then one to export it so that we can overwrite this, and like we'd be able to automatically fill in like descriptions for anything that's missing, because this has a description over here which is retrieved from, you know, the GitHub API description field. So we want an import feature and an export feature, and should be as automated as possible, and if possible we should be able to trigger either of the processes from using the Rowie user interface. Just to give you a little bit more information about Rowie, it's you can host it yourself, but you can also use their like software as a service to get like a free demo app that you might be able to play around with. Yeah, and it's pretty good. It's based on it uses Google Firestore, you know, by firebase.com. That's where all the data is hosted. Yep, and I'll make sure to include the source code for the cron job that's running, and I'll attach that to the issue, which is right here. This is the URL. Oh, here, let me submit this issue so it actually gets a. Okay, so issue number 2. So it's going to be this URL, and I'll post a link to this YouTube video here. But this will also include the source for the cron job I'm running that scrapes all of the GitHub repositories. That way, if any random people are watching this video, or you think it would be useful to see how I'm saving the data to this Rowie database from like a third-party cron job. Ideally, if possible, we should bake in all the features into the Rowie user interface somehow, or at least the same project. But if we have to use a cron job on another free SaaS, I'm fine with that too. So if you go to Rowie, you could even check out this demo. There's a lot of cool features. You can go through the projects. Just so you know, to get to this table, you'll have to go to rowie.megabyte.space, and I'll have to grant you access to this table if you decide to take on this job. And then let's go. So I wrote down details to all this in the issue, but the final note that I want to add is so first we want to do the integration that allows us to sync that software.yaml with the GitHub Awesome list. And then the second thing is I want to create a web component that basically I want to have a search field. I want to have pretty much the same exact chart, except I want to be able to embed it into the Install Doctor website. And then also I want to add, perhaps with Algolia, we got to add a live search. So, you know, it'll be like, we should just be able to type in the search field. You can imagine the URL bar is the search field, command line, Hexel, and then this line shows up. So the chart should auto update, and it should be packaged as a stencil web component that I could include into other apps. Yep. So, and also just this project is, to iron out any kinks that might be involved, because eventually I'll be using this same data source for a CLI app and possibly a web app that allows you to build your install doctor repository, like fork configuration, with a GUI that's easier to use. All right, so that's it. Please let me know if you have any questions. Thanks for watching.